it makes no sense to me from a business perspective to be pushing the exclusivity line again.
Welcome to the Weekly Download, the definitive weekly podcast on the video games industry.
Oh, hello. Welcome back to the Weekly Download, brought to you by Big Games Machine. A few caretaking things, first of all. Apologies for the lack of episode last week. We had a really good episode planned. We recorded, but we ran into some unfortunate technical difficulties, which meant we had to, unfortunately, cancel last week's episode.
So if you feel like you missed out on 4 older than the average gamer men opining about their time in Destiny, then just drop us a comment and we'll respond.
I'll give you all the files.
Yeah,
but no, we're back. Alex and I were just saying to each other, it's been a few weeks since we have done an episode together. We had Yaz obviously has come in and done a few episodes, and we've swapped roles and other such things. But we're back, the gruesome twosome, back to delight your ears and your eyes with all the latest news in the world of video games. Unfortunately, quite a negative set of stories today.
Yeah,
we'll be looking at Nintendo in Japan, Switch 2 sales. We'll also be looking at the news that's come out as of the last day, really, that Xbox is looking at conducting another big round of layoffs. And I'd say, I know we've spoken about how positive Asher Sharma's reign, I guess would be the word, has been so far, but this is definitely going to be a big test, I think, for public reception to this slightly changed and a new version of Xbox. I know you have thoughts. Let's hold them until we get there. And then finally, we'll also be looking at Ubisoft, who always tend to be in the news and not for great reasons. Again, this week, we're looking at more layoffs and studio closures at Ubisoft. So that's kind of the headlines. We'll break away and we'll come back in a moment, and we'll start with this news about Nintendo Switch 2 sales in Japan. And our first story of this week's episode is the news that Nintendo Switch 2s are struggling to sell in Japan. But there's a lot of context to this. I think let's look at the context. So Nintendo raised the price of the Switch 2 in Japan from at the end of May on the 25th from 49,980 yen to 59,980 yen. So kind of doing the quick maths, we're looking at like 20%-ish. Quite a significant rise.
Yeah.
Now, because Nintendo announced that this price increase was coming, this triggered a really huge wave of purchases. So we were looking at, during May, 200,000 units a week because of people surging to get out and buy the Switch 2 ahead of this deadline. We've then, in the aftermath of that, seen an 87% crash in sales the following week, down to around 31,000 units. The original Switch, which also had a price increase at the same time, saw just 229 units in that same time. So I think the headline here, Alex, is Nintendo Switch 2 sales crater by 87%. But there's a much bigger story here that, with context, things aren't that drastic, are they?
I mean, no. There's a lot going on there that doesn't seem quite right. I mean, firstly, you saw it's a 1 month change. I mean, we've got to, it's only just kind of come in. And before that, they saw a spike of, what's that, about 10, 20% on sales. So, minus that from the conclusion. But you've also got to think like, okay, one, we're moving into summer. People play less games then. So, the people wanted one, went out to buy one. That intent was obviously driven by the fact that things were going. And then people who cost of living, difficult everywhere, including Japan, probably are like, okay, well, we can wait until, a sale, we want it, or a bundle or something like that. So all of that's going to impact it. But I think also, and something that this is the Japanese language, this is the region-locked version of the system. This was the underpriced version. And the international one kind of remains the same, which is still more expensive than that. So Japan had always been getting this incredibly cheaply. I mean, from my time in Japan when I lived there, I would have mentally converted that to around £250 at the price it is currently, which is obviously, a good chunk less. And they're still getting a big discount by having that region, making the choice to be region locked and language locked for the Japanese market, which is, I was going to say not to reward Japan, but it would be an even more expensive system in Japan. Wages and things haven't increased as much in the last 20 years from my recent visit. And
we've seen Sony do the same thing, haven't we?
Yeah,
with these different models to shelter, I guess, the domestic base from international issues, which is entirely fair. I think.
Did we talk about this when they announced it? Because I feel like I told the story recently, because this happened when they did it with cigarettes as well. They introduced a new cigarette tax. They put taxes up, I think, from 5% to 10%.
I think you have told this story.
I
think. But give us
we've cured smoking. We've cured smoking, because the month after they put the tax up,
no one bought any.
Cigarette sale cratered, but only for like 1 or 2 months, till the store people had bought the 5% off had run out, and then the same people went back to smoking. And often worse, because when they've got a massive, not to generalize, but a lot of smokers will smoke more when they have more. So, it was the reverse of solving the problem.
We'll see. We were looking at like 50,000 units a week before the announcement. We'll see if there's an impact to this price increase in the next few weeks, won't we? Or I think even going further in the next few months, because
it went up 300% before this. I misread the notes there. It went up 300% in the weeks before.
Yeah, it's very much.
This won't recover until August at least, and then they're still going to be up. Like, the idea that they were going to maintain those sales was ridiculous.
Well, it's Nintendo, not on purpose, but it's essentially Nintendo making that announcement created a bit of FOMO for people who were in the position where they looked and they thought, I haven't bought one up until this point because nothing has pushed me to do it, but I know I'll get one eventually. I can do it now. I might as well do it now. And then after that, we're now seeing the sales will have dropped so much, because now you're very much in the territory of the price has gone up. The price is going to be like that for a while. People will only buy the system if they want it immediately. So to me, what will be really interesting is seeing when these changes come to the West, which is in September. We'll see the prices rise in September. I wonder if we will see something similar in August, where we see the sales spike massively because people are still in a position where they're like, oh, I don't know if I do want one yet, but if I'm going to get one, I know I will eventually, and I'll do it now.
And I'm absolutely certain that something you'll want to discuss at the end of the show will impact that, the decision that you're going to want one eventually.
Maybe.
But I would also, yes, absolutely. This is the first console generation where you are incentivized to buy it early because it's going to go up in price, like across the board. Like, I never thought I'd feel smug for buying a launch PlayStation 5 because I got a deal. Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's all right. I feel like that about the Pro, and the Pro was so expensive. I mean, I managed to get it a little bit cheaper, and I offset the cost by selling my original PS5. But I thought, like you said, Alex, in the past, early adoption you've paid a tax essentially to adopt early, because you get to kind of buy into the excitement, the hype of a new system. I've always felt quite comfortable paying a bit more because I very much want to be having those conversations and enjoying it. And now it is kind of the smart move. I think the last thing I want to touch on this is, I think we're seeing the same thing with the Switch 2 as we are with the Switch. We saw a big drive in sales, then they cratered massively. I do wonder if the increase to the Switch in Japan and eventually in the West, I wonder at what point that leaves the cost of the price of being an affordable system, which is potentially a concern, although we're 9 years into the life of it now, so I don't think it's the biggest concern. But I wonder if it'll be harder to frame the Switch as a budget device.
I didn't see the numbers on the Pro. Oh no, there are some here. So yeah, that's the original, and also that's going to be the OLED Switch. And I say that because the handheld Switches when I was out there were 20,000 yen, so 10,000 or so cheaper.
The Switch Lite.
Yes, the Switch Lite.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. And those were like 200 yen or 20,000 yen for limited edition ones, so cheaper than this. And so I just wonder if it's like, okay, it's going up in price. How many people are really going to buy it? Like it. I think people that want the affordable system will continue to buy the Lite.
Well, yeah, and let's be realistic. When you look at the wider context around the price of other consoles, the Switch is still the cheapest. The Switch 2 is still the cheapest, and even better with the Japan-only unit, which is even more of a discount than you'd be paying anyway. So I'm not worried. I don't think Nintendo is all of a sudden going to struggle to sell Switch 2s, especially with some of the announcements they've made this week. But definitely, I think an interesting case study into the, that unintentional FOMO from Nintendo that I spoke about, where they, in a very consumer-friendly move, made that announcement and then must have been looking back and being like, whoa, we should just do this every time. Look how many units we're selling.
It's not
unintentional,
FOMO, right?
Isn't it? I think.
Yes. I mean, but you're not going to miss out. You're just going to pay more. I mean, that's almost everything like over time, isn't it? Like,
FOMO on the food shop. Get your bread now. Get your bread now.
Well,
but no, I think Nintendo will be okay. I think obviously the reporting on this is factually correct, but there's a bigger story here around that price increase, which is causing this. And I do think we'll see the same thing in the West in September, and then that will recover by the time you get to November and December.
Well,
I
was going to say, like, it'll be
you'll
see a big dip from September, October, but the moment Black Friday hits, people will be buying those gifts again anyway, right? Like people that want to Switch. Hopefully, all the parents out there that are like, my children want a Switch, are aware of this change, because there'll be people who are less tapped into the industry who could get nastily stung by this increase that they're not anticipating, which is going to I'd feel really bad if somebody's like, no, I'm budgeting for it, I'm going to buy it, and then they get stung by a price increase.
But then I think we have to give Nintendo credit that Nintendo have been very upfront.
They have let people know.
Especially in the West. You've got months.
Yeah. But you've got to know.
They're giving them plenty of notice.
You do have there are a lot of parents that won't know. And if they're buying it for a 5-year-old that also isn't keeping abreast of the current financial trends and markets, they might not mention it to their parents either.
Little Timmy, have you heard of the surge in AI GPUs? Right. Hear me out.
It's going to impact my Christmas present. Does Santa know it's going to impact my Christmas present? Like, it's a dark
You've got a GPU for Christmas, little guy. It's all we can afford.
And that's, like you say, very good of Nintendo to give that warning. It allows people to make those purchases, make those changes if they want to. But I do feel bad. I always have this kind of like pain in my heart when somebody's trying to do the best for their kids and then gets stung by something unrelated and they're unable to deliver it. And an increase like that could make a huge difference.
And we are back with our second story of the day, and we are talking about Xbox again. I think we've spoken very positively about Xbox in the last couple of weeks. We're not necessarily talking about them negatively, but we've got news to discuss, which is that Xbox is reportedly planning major layoffs that will likely take place just after the end of its fiscal year, which is June 30th. New Xbox CEO Asher Sharma sent a memo around internally that stated that Xbox is sitting on a, quote, razor-thin 3% profit margin, having spent $20 billion over the last 5 years, not including Activision Blizzard acquisition, while annual revenue in that time declined by $500 million. I don't think you need to be a top CEO or financier to know that having spent that much money and to be making a lot less money from it isn't ideal. I think what really stands out to me about this is that it's a real contrast between the public Xbox we've seen in the last week, where we've had, the big summer showcase, the return, although it's very vague, the return of exclusivity, which is something that Xbox players and fans have been calling out for. And then the flip side of this is the internal realities, which we're now seeing being reported, which is that things don't look great for Xbox on the back end. They are continuing to have issues that we've seen them have over the past few years. And one of the big things is that reportedly the marketing budgets are going to be getting slashed massively, which
I mean, if you're not going
typical,
outside,
I'd say, but
yeah, I mean, if you're not going outside of the Xbox, if you're focusing down on Xbox and you're not needing to advertise to other spots and you're trying to move everybody over onto Live. What's it called now? It's not Live, is it? What's Game Pass? Move everybody over into Game Pass. Why market it? It's going to be there. You can download it for free, right? It becomes Xbox marketing it all as a single entity, and like that leaves you with possibly the flagship things to get people into the ecosystem, but then you can promote everything internally within that, which could be a great way to save on, like you say, the marketing budget. But it's still a weird place to be. It's going to feel strange.
I really struggle, and I know we've spoken about this internally at work. When we're chatting, we've spoken about it with other members of the BGM team. To me, I really struggle to see this kind of news coming out and reason that with the exclusivity thing. It makes no sense to me from a business perspective to be pushing the exclusivity line again when they're clearly struggling with revenue. I don't see how I don't see how moving away from 150 million players on Switch or console, so I don't know how many players, but 20 million on Switch 2, 100 million on PlayStation 5. Obviously, they'll keep releasing on PC, but to me, you're cutting off the majority of players
I feel
with
like
some of these games. And
it's a longer game than that, and I'm sure things will still come to PC. Like,
yeah, I think PC is not in doubt, I don't think.
And it'll probably not be on Steam. It'll be on the Game Pass on PC. So you're cutting off, as you say, a huge portion. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of those games still came to Switch. It's not the same. Like we were saying before, like there are very few people who just own a Switch. Most people own one or the other. But the moment you go completely exclusive, then you're just, why would you ever? And Sony withdrew exclusivity, I think, on the last podcast I presented. I think that came around. So it's like, okay, well, if we're not all playing ball, then like let's pull the plug on this, because if you're just selling Xbox downriver, it becomes purely a digital platform at that point. You might as well not bother putting the investment into new machines. And I don't think that's where
I think I sit though with this, which I know is controversial.
But that's not where that's not where a lot of their audience is at the moment. So
no, of course, but I just struggle to reason with some of these decisions, because I just don't. I think PC is not in doubt. I think there's no way for them to I imagine it'll still be on Steam as well, because if Project Helix is by all accounts a PC essentially, there's no way you can really gate people from playing the games however they want to access them. And I think putting games on PC but not having them on Steam, that feels like a really silly move. So I don't.
Well,
I can't imagine
that they're already 30%. That Steam takes its cut. They probably negotiate a different rate with Steam in that case, because I can't imagine,
because they can compete directly, can't they?
Yeah. Like why would you give up that kind of level of that amount of your profit if you're already worried about the money?
100%. Oh yeah, this is what I mean though. It seems odd to me. I mean, something else that Asha Sharma said is that she's admitted that Xbox in the past has overextended itself trying to chase Game Pass subscriptions, cloud streaming, hardware subsidies. They're well aware of the fact that they've made mistakes. There's something else that I've seen from her at the Bloomberg conference over the weekend, where she was pressed on Activision Blizzard, and she wouldn't take a stance on whether that was a good deal or not after a few years. And I think that's something that hangs over Xbox as well. I think they've got this $75 billion acquisition, and I think they're still struggling to figure out. Well, they are, but then they've still got to climb out of that hole, haven't they? That was invested into them, and I want Xbox to do well. I do. I just worry when we see Xbox has had major layoffs for the last 3 years. It looks like it's happening again this year. There's also rumors going around that more studios might close, and that Xbox's like Xbox games studios will have a slightly different lineup. So what will that look like? I know we've spoken about the Psychonauts developer, Super Fine. No,
Yes, super fine. Double fine. Double fine.
Double Fine. That's it. I'm just combining different developers there. But we've spoken about Double Fine before, and I look at this situation and I think, well, if we're trying to figure out how to make more back on our investments, where does a studio like Double Fine sit compared to some of the bigger ones? And I know I've said this exact thing to you on this podcast. Double Fine is a great studio to have if you're all in on Game Pass, and it's about creating a catalog of great games, fun games, quirky games. But if that's less of the case and it's more about, are we making sure that everything we invest in is obviously ultimately that's what it's about, making money? Where do some of these more smaller niche studios sit? And I think if these rumors about some studios closing are true, I sadly think something like Double Fine is potentially
the thing you've
trouble.
got to hope is, because I know they were very good reports when they closed a number of studios, including Toy for Bob and Tango Gameworks. As long as they're allowing them some autonomy, and I think they did my recollection holds, when they did Toys for Bob, they basically were allowed them to be sold, but then were allowed like right of first refusal on the next project or something. So they kind of gave them independence. They gave them autonomy. They didn't dissolve the studio and take the name and take the IP. It was like, okay, you're allowed to make that, and then if we don't want it, then go out and do what you like.
Yeah, you've got to hope that if those rumors are true, and I'm not, for the record, I'm not saying it's not Double Fine.
No.
That's just a name that I'm throwing in there. But you have to hope. Well, we were speaking about this yesterday, weren't we? It's commercial success versus critical success. You can make a great game and you still lose out because of it. And I think that's just, the industry's brutal like that. But I hope, if there's obviously going to be a lot of job losses here, which is terrible, I hope that if we do see any studios potentially coming under fire, that it's not going to end up in a PlayStation situation where Sony acquired all these studios and closed them all down, and then all these people are left who were independent for years beforehand, got bought up, and all of a sudden they're in trouble because of the whims of the industry in whatever direction it goes in.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I imagine, like we said, these layoffs are reportedly going to be taking place at the end of June into the start of July. So I think we'll definitely be talking about this again when it comes around and we see what the reality is. But definitely a big test for this new Xbox. We've spoken so positively since March about how much they're listening to player feedback and how things seem to be turning a bit of a corner. But we know from the work that we do, this will be a rough storm to ride out, and as much goodwill as has been generated in the last few weeks, and it might not be.
I think this will
positive.
impact, and going back to those poor parents who don't know what's going on with Nintendo and are going to get charged more at Christmas. Like this won't affect a lot of people that are just interested in games, but those that watch the industry, it will definitely impact, and everyone will be impacted down the line when less creative games kind of are produced by Xbox or on Xbox. Because I'm sure that the studios and the talent, I'm sure that a lot of the studios and the talent will go out and continue to create somewhere, but it will be a strange thing. And I am sure in what is already a very stressful environment for a lot of people in terms of, money and finances, as we keep harping on about today, it feels like having this sort of Damocles hanging over them, not knowing if they're going to have a job at the end of the month, is going to be a huge stress on top of, if they are the ones that are put out there. So I hope whatever happens, their packages are good and they find something else quickly.
Yeah, welcome back to our third story of the day. We're kind of continuing straight from where we left off, really, by looking at the news that Ubisoft has already conducted what earlier in the year it said was its big final round of restructuring and layoffs. We've now had the news that both its Winnipeg and Belgrade studios that were mainly support studios they will both be closing down alongside restructuring of roles in the Barcelona studios and layoffs estimated to be 50 to 100 employees at its studio in San Francisco, which of note was the team behind XDefiant. More on that later. In total, we're looking at just under 400 roles potentially at risk. I mean, Alex, I don't know where to start on this. I just think Ubisoft is supposed to be making games. We should be talking about the games they're making, but they're really not able to break away from the public perception now, which seems to be layoffs, studio closures. To me, it's very hard not to view Ubisoft as a brand in not necessarily a negative light, but there's always negativity surrounding it. And most of that isn't really about the games at this point. It's more about the operations.
Well, I think the other side of that is that the games tend to be, and I mean this I'm going to try and be as even-handed as I can with this. They are unremarkable now. There's very little to take your attention because everything they're doing are very solid, very good games, very polished, but generally within IPs. So there's nothing to get you excited or draw your attention away from the fact when Ubisoft is mentioned that it tends to be negative news. Good games, negative news. For the most part, like I'm sure you could throw some examples that are kind of out of there, but they've got this Assassin's Creed Black Flag. It'll be solid, it'll be great, but it's Black Flag again. They don't have anything else that's blowing.
Yeah,
excited about a Resident Evil remake. One rule for Capcom, another rule for Ubisoft.
But I think we've spoken about Capcom before, and I know Square Enix in the same way about how clever they are with using remakes to support what else they're doing. If you look at Ubisoft this year, the only 2 games they're releasing which have been announced, and we're looking at just consoles only, they've got a few mobile things, but the Black Flag remake in July, and then the Rayman Legends remake in October. That's their only 2 major releases this year.
Did they come out the same year originally as well? Am I dreaming? They came out really close together.
2012, 2013.
Yeah, around then. I think they both did.
They've already released. There was the 30th anniversary edition of Rayman earlier in the year.
Mm-hmm.
But even going back and looking last year, we've got Assassin's Creed Shadows and Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown on a few other platforms, but the reality is that Ubisoft is not releasing games. Like they're not releasing a lot.
They are, but they
stuff
do have. We're constantly surprised by this, though, aren't we? Because Rainbow Six Siege, an ongoing concern. I think For Honor's still going. Skull and Bones, I think, is still like they're maintaining a lot, and The Division, like they're maintaining live service games that we're just not looking at.
And XDefiant.
Although
we'll see what that looks like now. That if you're someone who's a fan of XDefiant, I think, and this, let's not forget, Ubisoft pitched XDefiant as the next big live service shooter, and they were very bullish on it. And now we're seeing that the team behind that is facing layoffs, team reductions.
But we saw this with Marvel Rivals as well, right? Once it moves into live service mode, they downscale the most expensive studio, which San Francisco will be. Granted, that doesn't apply to Winnipeg and Belgrade, because obviously the Belgrade, I imagine, is a more affordable studio. I don't know about Winnipeg, though Canada obviously gets a lot of tax benefits for development there. But I imagine as we move into a live service model, we're going to save money on those by putting the ongoing support elsewhere, which is what I was wondering with what the people they are cutting. Like, there's this ongoing idea that Ubisoft is ultimately looking to try to sell it. Like, they're just looking to sell it and kind of be out. Guillermo and everyone is just like, meh. That's the vibe that
the
seems to be
going
out
in the wrong
there.
direction, if that's the intention.
That's the point. Like, if you let go of these, then your yearly profits look like they're going up because it's not a fixed cost, and they can outsource to independent studios those same.
Well, they've been notorious for being, I look here, 2 of these studios which are closing down, which are essentially support studios. Ubisoft have been quite notorious for having loads of studios in loads of different parts of the world that all work. Say, like, I think if you look at the credits for Assassin's Creed Shadows, there's about 15 different studios there. But that's the idea of having support studios in-house, essentially, because they're under the Ubisoft name. that's very antiquated. No, we can't even
God,
say
you've
it. That's
broken my
a
head.
little bit
Antiquated.
old-fashioned.
Antiquated.
There you go. I'll stick with old-fashioned.
Broke my brain.
Because we are seeing a lot of this work outsourced. So I'm kind of, or AI, of course. But so I look at
Ubisoft.
just gonna let that keep going in the background. But I think these closures do make sense because I don't think it's a business model that works anymore. Whether it is, as you've said, to in the longer term look to sell it on as a much leaner proposition, potentially. But I think what we are seeing is Ubisoft is consolidating everything it has into the main offices and studios and regions that it works in. Something else that we're seeing is that a lot of these cuts are in publishing, in marketing, in regional PR, which I think supports this idea that they've realized that they're not making enough from that very acute, narrow focus in specific regions. And it's a case of let's scale things back. The marketing we're going to do is going to be the same for everyone. It's not going to be hyper localized, and we'll see.
And if
they're
they're thinking that they don't need a marketing department because they don't need it all the time, then I know an absolutely great PR and marketing agency that they could use to cover the game.
Well, I mean, if you're only releasing 2 remakes in a year, then you don't really need marketing, do you? I think
they sell themselves, don't they?
Yeah, I don't think. I even said to you this morning, I don't know if this story would make the cut today. It has, but I think there's not too much more to say about this because we keep seeing this from Ubisoft. I feel for Ubisoft because I think it's very hard. Like I started with when I was talking about the public perception, it's hard for them to break out of that now. I think their perception within the community of players is at an all-time low. And I even think on the industry side, when you see what they are doing with these closures and restructurings and other such things, it's hard to have too much faith in what they're trying to do because it's not really clear what the end goal here is. And then, we might see a slate of great games coming out in the next few years, but a lot of the projects seem to be stuck in development hell. I do think that having your biggest games of the year both being remakes, one of which no one even asked for a remake of, is an interesting decision. But I don't know. Maybe we'll see Black Flag sell 15 million copies in a week and it'll save them. But
kind of understand going back to Black Flag. It was the last really big release. I don't understand going back to Rayman Origins. It looked incredible.
And remaking it with a completely different art style.
Yeah, just make a new Rayman game. You can keep the same gameplay, make it but what, like Origins was a particular style. I don't know why they're doing it because it was.
And I don't think it will sell very well. I think
it will do gangbusters on Switch too.
But most of the people who will buy it, I think, are going to be the people who already know how good it is. It feels like you said, why not make a new one? And welcome to this week's Rapid Rundown. Rather than looking at a few of the funnier and more light stories we've seen over the last week, this week we're basically just going to be very quickly looking at all the new announcements, announcements, release dates we've seen, teasers and such, and from all these showcases, and just having a little natter about them. Now, Alex, I think I know which ones you're maybe the most excited for. But I'm going to ask you, hey, Alex, which announcements are you really excited for? And do any of them rhyme with more Resident Evil D-makes?
Yes. Now, I am very excited for Code Veronica. I'm confused by the choice to do Veronica next. I know it's the one that a lot of fans have been crying out for, but it kind of sits... How much do you don't know anything about this, do you, Tom?
No.
Essentially, one of the big bads, you probably know this, of Resident Evil is Albert Wesker. And this is like midway through his character arc. And while you could argue that the first remake, RE1, which they're probably saving for the anniversary, would be with a kind of beginning of that tale, and that's already been remade. I think a lot of people that are fans of the new lot haven't played the Resident Evil 1 remake because it's in a different engine. It's not over the shoulder. It's still the kind of traditional fixed camera angles. So I think starting at this, there's going to be this kind of guy that looks a bit like a albino Neo that walks in halfway through and starts backflipping, and people are going to be like, what? There's an assumption of this classic character is known by a lot of players. And I'm sure with YouTube and everything, it'll be filled in. But within the storyline, they're about to drop a superhuman into the story with no context, and that's going to be wild for people.
I've seen, as you know, I'm not a Resident Evil person, but I've seen that apparently it will link to Requiem. Is that correct? I've seen a few things that there'll be links to it, which is interesting. I guess
they can put in new hooks. Like I'm very keen for them to start rewriting from around 5 to like start making tweaks to the story, because I think it 5, they clearly didn't have a cohesive idea, and I think now they're revisiting it with that in mind, and it gives them the opportunity to do that. But as it sits, I don't know what those overlaps would be.
So to clarify, your most exciting announcement from the last week is a remake.
And I'll take Alien Isolation 2. I'll take Alien Isolation. Oh yes, you go. What brand new, previously unknown IP are you thinking of going for?
What I'm really excited to play on my brand new next generation Nintendo system is a game that I played for the first time in 2012, and then have gone back and played the original version of Ocarina of Time.
Game that's already been remade once.
I have my Zelda Lego here, among others. I myself confess.
Last month to buy that if you want it before it's delisted.
True, the Deku Tree, and it does come in the Ocarina of Time version as well if you want to celebrate the release. But yeah, I'm really excited for Ocarina of Time. I think that's my biggest one. I've still not finished Resident Evil. I've still not finished Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Very different kind of game. But Revelations looks really good as well. But to me, like Ocarina of Time it was the 3DS remake was the first Zelda game I ever played.
I feel so old.
Don't worry. And yeah, I fell in love with it, and I've gone back and played the original.
Good.
But yeah, Ocarina of Time was
the original Ocarina of Time or the original Zelda?
I tell a lie. Link's Crossbow Training is technically the first Zelda game.
That's not a Zelda game.
It's a Link game.
It's not a Legend of Zelda game. It's Link's Crossbow Training. It doesn't have the subheader.
I know, but technically in the same universe. And I was like,
I'll give you that.
Who's this guy? But yeah, I'm really excited for Ocarina of Time. I think unfortunately with leak culture nowadays, I was aware of it potentially being a thing. But to me, as soon as I heard the first notes of Saria's theme, I want to make sure I get the name right, otherwise people will crucify me. But as soon as I heard the first like notes on the flute in the trailer, I was immediately like, oh, it's actually happening. I think the fact that they've used similar language to what Final Fantasy VII Remake has used in terms of this idea of the game, of the story being reborn, the Legends reborn, makes me think that it's not just going to be a remake in the way that the 3DS version was, which makes me quite excited. I know that people will complain that it's another remake, but the way I see it, the 3DS game was 13, 14 years ago at this point. You've got an entire generation, 2 generations of kids and anyone that's fallen in love with Zelda since Breath of the Wild, which exploded like no game in the series ever has. And I'm really excited to see new people come in and play Ocarina of Time. It's not my favorite, but
that's Wind Waker, because it's the best one.
Well, I respect the fact that it, for when it originally came out, it changed everything. And playing it on the 3DS, I do remember just thinking, wow, this game is amazing. And yeah, that's what I'm very excited for. And Nintendo Switch Sports Resort for the Thumb Wars.
Okay. Well, I've got 2 like movie IPs or non-gaming IPs. I mentioned Alien Isolation 2, which means I've got to go back and actually finish Alien Isolation 1. I want that game to be a little easier because it's just a bit. I mean, I'm sure it isn't as hard as I'm making it out to be, but I'm trying to do things perfectly, and you know how that kind of goes wrong. But the other one is Star Trek Shadow Frontier, I think it's called. Is that what the new one is? Yeah, Shadow Frontier. A horror movie in this world of Star Trek makes, or a horror game in the world of Star Trek makes all the sense in the world. You're going to new places, absolutely wild. The idea of like a monster of the week that just is coming for you could be incredibly exciting. And especially, I mean, that's me being biased. So Star Trek's one of my other things. Like, there it is. Undoubtedly, Star Trek's on my list.
They could have played it so much safer and not. I don't like horror games, so I've got no interest in it. But they could have played it so much safer. But you're right. I always think, to me, the idea of horror in space is infinitely more terrifying than like horror on not just Earth, but a planet on the ground. I think the idea of being in space and having whatever it will be chasing you and coming for you, I'm surprised that Star Wars, we haven't seen anything from Star Wars in a bit of a horror kind of way.
There were inklings of it, but they never kind of followed through during Rogue One. Whatever that beast was that kind of sucks your brain, it's like, that's a pretty horrible idea. They just never give you.
Yeah.
In my head, I'm saying Sarlacc, but I know that it's not that.
No. So yeah, in conclusion, we're excited for all the same IPs that we've loved for years.
For decades. Yeah. Nothing. Please, nothing new. Feed me my IP slop, please.
Yes, please. Yes, please, Nintendo. Please give me strangely realistic looking Link.
Tell you what, I don't know who's making the Star Trek game now that I've said that. That's interesting.
Sure,
there we go. Games Excite. No, that's a different one.
Someone.
No, I lied.
I'm going to start doing. You go and have a look. I'll start doing the wrap up.
Yep, start wrapping up. I'll yell out a name in 2 seconds.
Yeah, thank you so much again for tuning in to this week's episode. Definitely, a bit more serious than the past few weeks, and looking at the realities of the industry with layoffs and such, but a lot of stuff that we will have to keep an eye on and come back and speak about in the future. If you have enjoyed this episode, please, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts, please drop a like, follow, subscribe. We produce weekly episodes of the podcast alongside our weekly download newsletter. The newsletter you can find in the description. That's available via LinkedIn. So you get all the most important stories of the week. You get our thoughts and you get what it means for the industry at large. So if you're struggling to stay abreast of everything that's going on, I struggle to do that, and I'm the one writing these things, so I sympathise. But don't worry, we've got you covered. Alex, do you have any closing remarks?
It was Bloober Team. It was Bloober Team. Of course, it was Bloober Team. Should have thought.
That's a good team.
It's a 50-50. It's a 50-50. But if they do anything like they did with Silent Hill, or
we're praying for a Silent Hill-esque experience.
And it's Ro Lauren as well, who is she's right here. My little Lego Ro Lauren came with the shuttlecraft. That's it. That's my final thought.
That's your final thought. So, well, again, thank you, Alex, for joining me. It's been a while. It's always good to have a little professional natter.
There you go.
And that's us for another week. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much for tuning in, and have a good day. Bye-bye.